Are you response able? Can you handle all of your responses? Do you decide what you do and what you don't do? Hi guys, thanks for watching. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. There are going to be two topics, maybe I'll branch them out into separate videos. I'm not sure, we're just going to go for it. But thank you for watching if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you for listening if you're listening on Spotify. And today the two things we're going to be talking about are responsibility, what that means and how we can take more responsibility, how we can understand if we are responsible, and how, if we decide to take responsibility, it can then transform not only our lives, but the lives of our loved ones, of friends and families and all that kind of stuff, and the relationships that we have. So yeah, we're just going to dive into it. But if you have any comments or have any thoughts on this, I'd love to know if you are also trying to be more responsible, how it's going for you, and yeah, share your journey. So all of this really, it can be summarized in the ability to learn. So you need to get the information into your brain somehow. Now for me, the way that I got this information into my brain was through audiobooks. Now that's because typically I've not read a great deal of books, so I'm not the fastest reader. And I always thought that was something that limited me, or it was basically a self-limiting belief. I allowed that to limit me. However, I got hooked on audiobooks. Audiobooks helped me learn a lot about my profession, sales, then helped me understand how to become a better person. And through trying to become a better person, I have been able to expand my mindset and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to do a separate video on audiobooks because that's the key to all of this. If you're wondering, how does this guy know this and all that kind of stuff? But that's the key. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the meat of the conversation today, which is responsibility. So I first heard about this concept in a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, he basically poses a question. And he asks, are you responsible? And this is a question that, if you're listening to this, you should ask yourself. Are you responsible? Now, when I asked myself that question after I heard it, I was like, of course I'm responsible. Yes, obviously. And it was almost like a snap reaction because you assume that you have to be responsible, that's what we have to be. We have to be responsible. But responsibility is not a cover-all term where you are responsible. There's layers within it. And you might be wondering, what do you want about layers? That's what I would have been thinking if I'd watched this video. But I'll tell you. So rather than saying, I am responsible, full stop, you have to imagine responsibility responsible is two words, response and able. So then you ask yourself, are you response able? Can you handle all of your responses? Do you decide what you do and what you don't do? So yes, of course I decide what I do and what I don't do. Nobody controls me. Nobody tells me what to do. And that might be what we think, because that's what I thought at the time. However, imagine you answer that question and you say you are responsible. Now imagine it's two words, response able, and you say, yes, I handle all of my responses. I'm response able. I can handle all my responses myself. Nobody tells me what to do. Now imagine or picture a situation or a time in your life where you might have lost control, or you were having an argument with somebody, or somebody frustrated you, a family member, a loved one, a situation on the street, a situation at work, any situation where you ended up either having an argument, if it wasn't overtly to somebody, imagine it was just in your head. Imagine you started thinking really negative, aggressive thoughts, or, bad thoughts, or whatever those thoughts were. So now put yourself in that situation and now ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? And when I asked myself that question, I would go on the blame game. I'd say, well, no, I'm only feeling this way, or I only had an argument, or I only did this because because this person did that thing. And I have great justifications and great reasons for why my reaction was completely valid, because other people were behaving in certain ways that were wrong, X, Y, Z. But imagine justification is just a big box, and I was a master justification. I still am, but I'm trying to be more responsible. So imagine, forget the justifications. Justifications is I acted like this because of that external thing. Now, if you ask yourself in that situation, why am I behaving like this? Why am I having an argument? Why am I angry? And any of your answers begin or sound or start with, I'm X because that person, because external factor. Oh, I only did this because they did something to me first. If it's any of those, and if you answered that first question to say, I am responsible and no one controls me, now imagine it's two words, response-able. You just said, or what I would say to myself is, I acted a certain way because somebody else acted a certain way first. Somebody else did something first. Somebody else, started, the altercation or whatever it was. So now, if you go back and you say, well, hang on, I thought you said you were responsible for all your behaviours and all your actions, but you just told me the reason you had this action, this behaviour, this whatever, is because somebody else did something. So if you look into that in detail, and this is blew my mind, they or that other person, if they weren't there, would you do that thing? And if the answer is no, you wouldn't do that thing if that person wasn't there, then they are controlling you. They're controlling your actions, they're controlling what you do. Now, the way that I thought about this was, imagine somebody literally telling you exactly what you had to do, when you had to do it, why you had to do it, and leaving you no option. And when I thought like that, I thought, hey, no, whoa, I am responsible. I'm the guy that is supposed to be responsible for all my actions. But when I explain why I did certain things, in the heat of the moment, I would say it's because this person is X, because that person did Y. And that really shocked me. So imagine it's a spectrum. Responsibility is a spectrum. You might be really responsible in some areas and might not be responsible in certain areas. Now, if you want to become more responsible in those areas, this is what that conversation is all about. So in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the habits is responsibility, taking responsibility for everything that happens to you, for you, around you, all that kind of stuff. Now, when we do that, in terms of negative behaviours and all that kind of stuff, it can be really hard because that means that we are the ones that are causing our own, pain and suffering, which can be really hard to handle. But it can also be very freeing. And the reason it can be really freeing is because by taking responsibility, by taking accountability for everything, even if something bad happens, like you get fired, something like that, you say, wait a second, I'm responsible. I'm responsible for, everything that happens. I'm responsible for that. Is there any, and if you say, no, I'm not responsible. Imagine it's the spectrum again. Is there any way that you could take even 1% of responsibility? Start small. And you say, well, yes, I could take 1% of responsibility. Sure. Then you're on your way. And it's about increasing that responsibility to say, yeah, I'm completely, fully responsible for all of this. Now, when you do expand that responsibility, it means that what you can do is, even if you have an argument and it's somebody else's fault, I think of arguments because that was my main conflict point, but yours might be something else. It might be being sarcastic. It might be, why did I act in a certain way? It's like, well, it's just because they put me in a funny mood. But by taking responsibility in a small way, you can start to take back control of all of your behaviours. So if you can take responsibility, and this is really tough. When I did it the first couple of times, it was more as a novelty to be like, this can't work. Surely this can't work. But imagine if somebody treats you wrong, in your mind, then what you can do is you can apologise to them. Now, that might seem crazy, but I've got a couple of examples of, where it really changed my perspective, really worked for me on a personal level with people that I had arguments with, in the past. And the end result of me taking responsibility was so much better than when I was in the blame game situation of saying, oh, well, no, it's their fault. I'm not going to apologise, all that kind of stuff. They can do it first. When you take responsibility, you don't only just take responsibility for that situation and that behaviour in that moment. You take responsibility for everything. So they might have been responsible for the falling out. But if you want to master the whole relationship, you can take responsibility and it doesn't even matter. That's how responsible you are. The little things don't matter because you have your eye on the bigger picture. So that's where it can be really hard. Apologising for when it's wrong. Now, I'll give you an example of where it worked for me. So there was a family member that we'd had a falling out. We hadn't spoken for about 2 or 3 years, and there was no end in sight. And when I listened to this book about responsibility, I was like, it asks you to think of a situation where you've had an argument, or someone you're not talking to, or somewhere where you've not had control of the situation and you blame somebody else. And it asks you to, and this one argument came to mind. I was like, well, this one was pretty tough. And I still did in my mind blame that other person. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm responsible, but it's their fault. But you can't be responsible if you blame other people. So I apologised straight out of the blue. Apologised, through text or whatever medium you feel comfortable with, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I wanted to take responsibility for everything my side. Look, I want to apologise for my behaviour. You're not apologising for them, or taking responsibility. And I suppose I shouldn't get apology and responsibility mixed up, because taking responsibility isn't necessarily apologising, it's taking responsibility. So what I did is I took responsibility by apologising for my actions, and by doing that and taking responsibility for the whole thing. So you apologise for your actions and take full responsibility. It's I am responsible. You can just say that, I'm responsible. And a relationship that had basically, stopped to exist restarted the day after a 3-year pause. For the first time, I spoke to that family member, and it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. So I now start to understand why people say that you need to forgive, and you need to take responsibility. Because by forgiving and by taking responsibility, you no longer have the burden on your shoulders. You're not carrying it anymore as a chip. And it's not affecting you. So that's an example. I've got a lot of more examples where, and the key is just to apologise. Take responsibility. I'm sorry for what happened. I take full responsibility. I'm sorry for what happened. I take full responsibility. It's quite a nice way to do it. But it's the ripple effects that these things have. So that one argument caused this whole tension. Now, that one argument is resolved by apologising or taking responsibility. So that's how responsible you can be. You can be so responsible that everything is your fault. Whether you fail, whether you succeed. And if you fail and it's your fault, you can change it. If you fail and it's somebody else's fault, you can't change somebody else, but you can change you. If you win and it's your fault, fantastic. You know what I mean? It's great news. So that's what this accountability and responsibility, is all about. And that's how it's really changed my life in terms of not blaming others, and not labeling and judging. Trying is the key here. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm trying every single day to get there. So if you're on this journey, if you're trying to be responsible as well, if you have family members or friends that you'd like to rekindle relationships with, and, at the moment in your mind you say, oh, it's not my fault, it's their fault. Think of how you could take responsibility. And even if it doesn't resolve the situation, even if it doesn't resolve the friendship, it's not really the point. The point is that you take responsibility. And by doing that, you can enhance your life. You no longer have to deal with that burden. You don't have to think about it anymore because you're responsible. It's fine. That was my fault. I'm responsible. So I'd love to know what you think about this this topic. And I suppose there's one more thing that I'd like to say, and it's Jim Rohn said, there's a motivational speaker called Jim Rohn, phenomenal guy. If you want to enhance your life, I would recommend listening to an audiobook or reading a book that he's written, because if you're not a good reader though, listen to it very quickly. But there's a saying that he says, and he says, he used to say, I'll look after me. No, he used to say, you look after me and I'll look after you. But he realised how short-sighted that was, because as soon as you stop looking after me, I stop looking after you. However, he changed it. And now what he says is, I will look after me for you. I will look after me for you, and you look after you for me. And that way you can build a really strong friendship group, because everyone's looking out for themselves so they can help the other individuals. And if you think of it like that, it really can enhance your friendship circles and really build those strong relationships. So in another way, if you're responsible, if there are two people that are both responsible, I'm responsible. No, I'm responsible. Brilliant. Great. Oh, fantastic. They're both taking responsibility. They're both owning this. Fantastic. Two people not taking responsibility. It's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. It's never ending. So the way to go about this is responsibility. Even if there's one person taking responsibility, it's your fault. It's my fault. Ended. And that's how simply we can shortcut these never-ending arguments that improve our lives, our mental health. And all of this was made possible through audiobooks, guys. So thank you for watching or listening. If you want to listen or watch more, subscribe on however you do that. I'm not really sure. And have a fantastic day, guys. Have a great day. See you later, and let's take responsibility. Hi guys, thanks for coming to my channel. This is where we're going to be looking at audiobooks and how we can improve what we can do and what we can learn from some of the best audiobooks in the world. And I want to let you in on a little secret. If you're not a fast reader, I'm not either. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be conquering that with audiobooks. We can listen to the audiobooks. I'll show you how, and if you have any questions, let me know. So let's get into this. I look forward to going on this journey with you.